In the Philippines, the only Asian country that was part of the Spanish Empire, stands a colossal reminder of colonial days. A European-style citadel encloses a maze of streets. Join me as we visit a time when the Christian cross had the power of a sword.
I'm Jason Pomeroy, an eco-architect and urban planner, and I'm passionate about great cities. I'm travelling to a series of great cities and finding out how old and modern architecture give each city its special character.
Manila, the Philippine capital, is a catalogue of contradictions. Beset by squalor, yet always making progress. A churn of antiquity and modernity. Amid a global slowdown, the Philippine economy has rebounded, and Manila is again a hotbed of development.
I've had the privilege of designing many wonderful buildings in Manila, and here we are standing in 71 Gram, here in modern Makati, the epicenter of trade and commerce in the Philippines. But it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, the center of Manila was Intramuros, and it has a very strong beating Spanish heart.
Intramuros was an immense colonial enclave. The Spanish colonized Manila in 1571, and as Spain's only Asian trading post, Intramuros was a western terminus of galleons departing Acapulco, Mexico. Trade brought wealth, and wealth attracted predators. So colonials walled themselves in. 6 meters high, the parapets of Intramuros stretched 4.5 kilometers, enclosing 64 hectares of what was once Spanish domain.
Here I am in Intramuros, and Intramuros means within the walls. This fortified city was built by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, conquistador and first Governor General of Manila, who defeated Raja Sulaiman, the former leader. What's quite impressive by this is that actually the place was the seat of the Spanish colonial administration.
First stop, Plaza Mayor, the central square.
There are two key buildings that will actually front onto the square. On one side we have Manila Cathedral, the seat of the Catholic faith, and on the other side, Palacio del Gobernador, the seat of governance. Architect Villalon, thank you very much for meeting me here.
Through his column in a major newspaper, Filipino architect Augusto Villalon promotes the conservation of his homeland's heritage.
These were the centers of Spanish power, so church, the Governor General, who used to live here.
Right.
These were the symbols of Spanish colonialism. It was to spread the faith, and it was to govern.
As colonizers, the Spaniards had a strong sense of cultural mission. They were defined by their religion and approached their outposts with evangelical zeal. The arrangement of the city square reflected this characteristic of Spanish rule. The church established hundreds of missions and parishes throughout the islands. The Philippines became Asia's only Catholic country. Near Plaza Mayor stands the oldest church in Intramuros and all of Philippines, San Agustin. Works on the structure began in 1587 and was completed in 1604.
Just think, months at sea for friars and architects to finally arrive in Manila, having to create Baroque churches out of stone. What we have here is an example of European architecture, but with a twist, and the local labourers would actually infuse certain elements. Well, yes, we have certain European flavours, but we also get a flavour of the local in these food dogs, which also reference Chinese symbolism. this perfect marriage between East and West delivered in this incredible edifice.
St. Augustine Church is full-on Baroque, a souvenir from Spain's glory days when the empire was a powerhouse awash in gold, silver, marble and ivory.
This has all the hallmarks of a European church. You've got the nave, you've got the apse.
When it's time for the priest to preach, he walks up here to the pulpit and delivers the word of God.
What we're seeing are elements of the tropics still. I can really imagine a frustrated friar or architect scratching away at his head thinking, well, I want a European church, and what you're doing is actually giving me something that's very, very local, but that adds to the charm, a real eclectic piece of architecture.
The interior repeats a cruciform pattern with vaulted stone ceilings. And these ceilings have a breathtaking design.
That's so beautifully painted. I mean, it almost adds a further three-dimensionality to it. It almost kind of disappears away.
In French, the phrase is trompe l'œil. That means fool the eye. A phrase perfect for this display, which persuades the eye to see in 3 dimensions when there are only 2. The walls are adorned with religious symbols and motifs. Blossoms, angels, creatures and rosettes. Soulful art for a holy place. Catholic liturgy has always emphasized music. Hymns, long ago in Latin, now in Tagalog and English, have filled St. Augustine.
Every single time I come to the Philippines, I always seem to hear music.
Everywhere.
And I guess it all starts here. Singing is elevated, almost literally here.
When the priest in the main altar starts chanting and the organ and the choir up there respond, it's just a total experience. It just gets you.
It's like a rich cacophony of sound that's awe-inspiring.
Absolutely.
So that's maybe why you're such good singers.
Maybe so. I'd like to show you something. Come with me. It's this way. This is the tomb of the founder of Manila, the conquistador, Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. He came to the Philippines from Spain through Mexico, founded Manila, and was the first governor.
You know, there's something quite striking about Legazpi in this pose. The sword of a soldier, of a conquistador, clutching the sacred cross.
Clutching the cross, which tells the story of why he's here.
So what separates the Spanish conquistadors from the Dutch, Portuguese and British colonists? Well, the Dutch, British and Portuguese were all about economic exploitation of the locals. But for the Spanish colonists, it was more than just economic exploitation. There was an element of cultural transformation. So, economic exploitation, religious conversion, territorial expansion, cultural transformation, a 4-pronged governance. The city fathers, the merchants, the soldiers and the friars all working in unison as a team to try and define a Spanish cultural identity.
In colonial times, people in this citadel lived vivid lives. We'll show you how when we come back. I am visiting Intramuros, a centuries-old city within a city that was once the hub of colonial Manila. The Second World War reduced Intramuros to rubble. Many residences were wrecked. Most of what we see now are structures that have been rebuilt to capture the flavour of Spanish rule. Cara Manila is a museum built to illustrate how people lived here in colonial times.
Dr. Laya.
Since the 1970s, Dr. Jaime Laya has been instrumental in the multi-sectoral efforts to rebuild Intramuros. Cara Manila is one of Dr. Laya's projects.
We're standing in a house that was supposedly built in the first third of the 19th century. The design itself was taken from the photograph of a house that used to be located in the business district across the Pasig River.
Cara Manila is a bahay na bato. In English it means stone house. It is so called because the foundation is made of stone and the upper level made of wood.
What I'm really interested in is to see how life was like in the past, so maybe you should lead the way.
This way.
Wow. This is wonderfully ornate. I wasn't expecting to see such lavish timber ornamentation.
This lavish lifestyle was typical among Spanish, as well as the wealthy and well-educated locals who were known as the ilustrado or enlightened class.
This would be the formal living room, the sala or salon.
Yes.
And this is not normally used.
So this would be a very, very formal space, only used occasionally.
Yes.
Embellishments were the norm, featuring local motifs like bamboo, palm fronds and banana leaves. With Intramuros being a trading post, the world was its department store.
The decor is really from all over the place. So you have European elements, you have Chinese, you have Japanese, and so on.
Dr. Lyer guides me through bedrooms filigreed with ornate design.
So this must be the master bedroom.
You guessed right. And so they went to all kinds of trouble to really make, for example, the elaborately painted ceiling.
Even just waking up and being greeted with angels and cherubs, I guess it will always put a smile on your face.
That's right.
Catholicism is one indelible mark the Spanish have left on the Filipino people. Since colonial days, houses often included chapels or altars. Many homes honour Jesus Christ or patron saints.
The altar, you'll notice the style is Gothic, and so even the ceiling paintings, the wall paintings are in trompe-l'oeil.
Religion is omnipresent. You are always having the Catholic faith very nearby.
Yes, in fact, in many houses, the most valuable pieces would be the saints.
Life in the tropics meant making adjustments to basic architectural design. These windows are a good example.
Well, glass was expensive during those days, and so a certain kind of shell, which we call capis, that became window panes.
And then you've got these shutters on the inside that will allow you to control the glare and also provide a bit of air to flow through as well.
And then at night, even if you close the windows for protection,
Yes.
you can open the shutters below, and you still have ventilation.
So why are we not designing like this today?
Well, we prefer air conditioning.
And a beautifully formal dining area. I guess this is where all the pomp and circumstance used to take place with large, lavish meals.
These fans do more than just drive the flies away.
Can I give this a go? So I guess then you've got the early air conditioning. Helper or servant who'll be able to work the fan to keep everybody cool. Honestly, in this sort of temperature, I could do with a fan like this.
Recreating a house like this and preserving that same sense of craftsmanship is not easy. Fortunately, there is a very special institution devoted to teaching these building crafts. The Escuela Telia was founded in 2009 on the initiative of the Spanish government to help revive Intramuros. The school teaches masonry, ironwork, woodworking and painting techniques to underprivileged youth. It offers 1 year of training for free.
So why a school of restoration techniques here?
Well, the Philippine government realized the need for taking care of our tangible heritage, and so with the assistance of the Spanish government, a project was initiated, and the idea was to revive the traditional crafts and arts necessary for the restoration of old structures.
One of the instructors, Jeffrey Cobilla, invites me into the woodcarving class.
I think I need to give it a go somehow.
Oh yeah, give it a try. That's just for marking the outline.
I think I can try that. So basically I just put... Okay, let's... No laughing. See, I'm not a master craftsman like you. I think I'd better stick to my drawing pens and the drawing board, I think. Thank you anyway. You know, it's wonderful to see schools like this because it shows how economically disadvantaged students can be given new skill sets as craftsmen and artisans. Hopefully these individuals will then pass on those skills to other people in the future, and hopefully we'll be able to look forward to celebrating Intramuros into the next millennium.
So much for life inside the walls. When we come back, we'll go to Extramuros, or outside the walled city, to experience another touch of Spain in the Philippines. Here in the Philippines, I am searching for echoes of Spain in the capital. Preserved for more than 300 years, Intramuros came to grief at the end of the Second World War. During the war, Manila became the second most devastated city in the world after Warsaw. Except for San Augustine Church, all of Intramuros laid in ruins. Some of Manila's oldest schools were levelled, but one university survived. Founded in 1611, the original campus of Santo Tomas was in Intramuros. In 1927, Santo Tomas was moved to Extramuros to accommodate the growing population of students.
If Intramuros was for the Spanish colonial elite, then Extramuros was, by and large, very different. This is outside of the city walls for the non-Spanish. But even still, there's a very staunch reminder that this was still a Spanish colony. This street is actually España Boulevard.
One enters the Santo Tomas University through the Arch of the Centuries. The school's patron saint is here. So is the two-headed eagle, emblem of the Habsburg kings of Spain. These symbols remind us that Santo Tomas is a royal and pontifical university chartered by both Spain and the Vatican. Ivan Henares is a champion of sustainable tourism and heritage conservation. He is here to show me around the 400-year-old institution.
Do you notice anything about the front? It's actually a 1954 replica because this is actually a back-to-back portal. Right. The one facing the main building is the original portal. And this is the last remaining piece of that original campus. They brought this arc here stone by stone.
A Dominican priest by the name of Miguel de Benavides is considered the founder of the university, although he passed away before the university was established.
He passed away in 1605 and he left behind his library and 1,500 pesos, which at the time was a huge amount of money.
So that's the starting point, I'm assuming, for the university,
yes,
with this big library collection.
Yes, he left the library and the money to establish an institution for higher learning.
So we owe a lot to this fine gentleman.
The original university only offered courses in theology and philosophy to young men. Now better known as UST, it is reputed to have one of the best colleges of medicine and law in the Philippines. At mid-campus stands the main building.
You know, if you think it's just religious buildings that are designed to give this sense of shock or awe or power and prestige, think again. Even educational facilities do the same. And here at Santo Tomas University, this building in itself is quite imposing. It's demonstrating a certain sense of power through education.
The main building was designed by Father Roque Ruano.
And pride of place in the middle of the building, who do we have here?
These 15 statues are actually representative of the spiritual and intellectual aspirations of the university.
In 400 years, Santo Tomas has educated many leaders like President Manuel L. Curzon and national hero Jose Rizal, alumni who had changed the fate of the country. But these walls have also witnessed dark times. In 1942, during the Second World War, Japanese forces invaded Manila. They converted the university into an internment camp. Non-Filipino civilians, mostly Americans and British, were rounded up and confined in the campus. Eventually, the spacious grounds became shantytowns.
Wow, so all of these sort of classrooms up here would have actually been converted into rooms for basically the internments.
That's right.
And then even the courtyard spaces then become places for camps.
That's right.
In 1944, American forces sent a task force to liberate the campus. In the process, the university buildings suffered light damage but remained largely intact. Intramuros, on the other hand, was a wasteland by the time the Japanese surrendered to the Americans. It was a costly victory. The country lost one of its greatest legacies from Spain, the walled city of Intramuros. The Philippines, which until World War II was one of the wealthiest countries in Asia, became a shadow of its former self. Thankfully, though, we can see a new birth. We can see renewed interest in heritage preservation as Filipinos realize its tourism potential and cultural significance. It's also lovely to see buildings that I've been working on just springing up from the ground. I guess testimony to the city's wonderful economic transformation. Architecture can reflect a city's context, physical and cultural. Malaysia distills its identity in its capital, Kuala Lumpur. The works of modern architects here reflect both the climate and the national religion, Islam. Islamic influences sit alongside Malaysia's quest to embrace cultural and racial mix. But can Malaysia find a way to integrate its modern identity with its Islamic roots? How will the country's architectural identity continue to evolve?
I'm Jason Pomeroy, an eco-architect and urban planner, and I'm passionate about great cities. I'm travelling to a series of great cities and finding out how old and modern architecture give each city its special character.
Kuala Lumpur, capital of Malaysia, is always growing. Malaysia is made up of many different cultures and races, and the city reflects their yearning for a unified identity.
You know, it's always reassuring as an eco-architect to hear the sounds and see the sights of construction taking place. And here I am in Kuala Lumpur, very close to a site where I'll be actually designing a building. what I love about Kuala Lumpur is it's a real eclectic mix of different styles of architecture that no doubt references Malay, Indian and Chinese and even British colonial architecture. I'm here on a quest to consider what is Malaysian architectural identity, and I'm hoping that I can be learning lessons from the past that can actually help influence my design and hopefully learn lessons so that it can actually inform future generations.
Both nation and city are multicultural, multiracial and multi-faith, yet both honour an Islamic core.
Here I am in Kuala Lumpur city centre, a place that's very close to my heart because I used to spend my summer months growing up here being half Malaysian and half English, and today, as a practising architect, I can actually enjoy the tall buildings around me. Now, if Shanghai has the World Financial Centre, if Dubai has Burj Khalifa, then Kuala Lumpur has the Petronas Twin Towers. One of the tallest buildings in the world. And like many tall buildings, these are symbols of power, prestige and opulence, of a nation's arrival, of its economic prowess. So where is the Malaysian architectural identity? And that's what I'm going to find out.
Malaysia was a long time finding an architectural direction. A multicultural population demanded secular design that nonetheless respected Islamic traditions and also local values. Compromise produced Petronas Twin Towers. From its 1998 completion until 2004, this was the world's tallest structure. 88 stories, 452 metres. Each of the tower's 5 tiers represents the 5 pillars of Islam. The design is based on the Rub el-Hizb. The Islamic symbol is formed by 2 overlapping squares. At the peaks of each tower rise 2 63-metre masts that evoke a mosque's minarets and also the Star of Islam.
Well, it's certainly a bit of a stunner, isn't it? I mean, what I find remarkable about this building is that it has all the trappings of a modernist building, but it has a very, very subtle Islamic element to it, particularly just in the floor plan. So, if this is actually a symbol of modernity, if this was Mahathir's legacy of a developing nation at the turn of the new millennium, what about 100 years earlier? What was the architectural identity of Malaysia, or even Malaya, in the past?
To see where the Petronas came from, we must step further back, into the old district, onto the foundation stones of Malay culture.
Here I am in Merdeka Square, Merdeka meaning independence in Malay, and this is where it all took place on the 31st of August 1957. But it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, this was known as the Padang during the British colonial era. I can imagine that this would have been a bit of a recreational space, maybe the British colonial playing a game of cricket to the bewilderment of the locals.
On the east side of Merdeka Square stands the Sultan Abdul Samad building, now housing the Ministry for Tourism. When the British completed it in 1897, they called it the Secretariat Building. This was the British interpretation of Malay identity, creating a hybrid of classical, Gothic and Asian forms. I've arranged to meet Mr. Lim Teng Nyong, a well-known architect and academic, to find out how this design came about.
What I find quite fascinating about this place is that it has all of those elements of Mughal, Moorish, Indian references in the onion domes and those pointed arches. But tell me, why on earth were the British designing buildings that looked far more Indian than some of these British buildings that you see here?
The architect was A.C. Norman. He wasn't a very well-known architect when he started all of this. And the weightage of Indian colonialism at the time was obviously India, and he picked references from India, obviously. So I suppose that at the time, there was perception that this country, being a sultanate at the time, fairly Islamic country. So I I suppose they thought that the right thing to do then was to draw references from Islamic references that they knew at the time. So I suppose it was India, it was Mughal, and so on. So you could see here that a lot of elements here were taken directly from Mughal architecture.
So this British architect, A.C. Norman, basically had to put on his thinking cap to think, what is it that's going to be representative of Malay architecture? I think it's going to be something that has a more of an Indian Islamic reference point.
Right. That was his interpretation.
His interpretation. Across the square stands the colonial era railway station. Designed by English architect A.B. Hubbock, the Kuala Lumpur railway station went into service in 1910. For 115 years, the station served as Peninsular Malaysia's rail hub. So here we are in the bowels of the railway station, and this is a kind of a familiar sight. I mean, I could imagine the colonial powers that be setting up these railway stations to provide an ease of transport around colonial Peninsular Malaysia.
Yes, it's critical, obviously. They need to link the south to the north, and the best way to get around doing that is to the railway tracks.
Absolutely.
So it was critical.
But what a remarkable difference. I mean, I look at the outside of the building and all of that Mughal, Moorish influence, and here we are on the inside, and actually I guess it's a symbol of technological advancement for the time with this wrought iron.
Yes, they need obviously to span across the tracks, and I think there's a 60 feet span across here. So I think they would need something like wrought iron or cast iron to achieve that. So that's exactly what they did.
It must have been quite an awe-inspiring experience for everybody arriving here to use the train for the first time amongst this technological ingenuity, and remarkably it's quite cool. I'm not sweating here. A key structure in its day, the station is a benchmark in Malaysia's architectural development. Who would have thought that the Secretariat building and the railway station would both be products of a British colonial administration, or even designed by British architects Norman and Hubbock? After all, these buildings don't speak of neo-mock Tudor like British colonial buildings in the region. What we find here is a Moorish and Mughal influence that actually look towards India as a source of inspiration. With independence, Malaysians began to forge an architectural identity of their own. But what would it be? The Masjid Negara, Malaysia's national mosque, a singular example of religious architecture with multicultural origins. It was designed by a Malay, constructed by Chinese and Indians, and financed by Buddhists, Hindus, Christians and Muslims. The 1965 project sought to be deeply religious, yet nationally inclusive. The directive from Malaysia's first Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, was to erect a new identity for Malaysia. Many former British, Dutch, Portuguese or Spanish colonies have often gone through this period of nation building to try and find its own sense of architectural and cultural identity. And here in Kuala Lumpur, it's no different. Masjid Negara, or the National Mosque, it's a startlingly modern building. I want to learn a bit more about what makes this particularly Malaysian. I'm meeting a former associate of Mr. Baharuddin bin Abu Qasim, the chief architect behind Masjid Negara. Mosques in India and the Middle East often stand out with features such as courtyards and arches and minarets. But here, the architecture focuses on both ventilation and cultural motif, taking advantage of crosswinds and local identity respectively. So where are we now?
We are in the internal courtyard. It's part and parcel of the mosque. But as you can see, it's elevated to allow for light, sun and air into this area. And And this is actually 48 columns, and it's raised like a canopy,
Yeah.
and it resembles the coconut tree.
Yeah, I was saying, it just doesn't really look like something you'd find inside a mosque.
Yes.
So why coconut trees? Why trying to reinterpret a coconut tree?
The architect was from a village nearby here called Jaram.
Yes.
And it is in the middle of a coconut plantation.
Right.
In those days, the coconut tree helps to cool down an area. So the fronds of the leaf allows a bit of sunlight in, but not a whole lot. So it's cooling to sit under the coconut tree.
Masjid Negara recalls the atap houses and surroundings of architect Baharuddin's childhood kampong, a traditional Malay village. He modelled it after the Malay house in its natural landscape. This provided an alternative to the common perception of Islamic architecture, allowing Masjid Negara to present a modern image of Malaysia's racially and culturally inclusive landscape. It would become a symbol of Malaysia's new aspirations.
Post-independence, when it came to trying to find Malaysian architectural identity, would you say that National Mosque actually played a very important role in helping to define that?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I think the architect is very conscious of what he has to do, how he has to translate his vision on paper to building, and how the general public will perceive it. And I think he did it very successfully. Previously, a lot of mosques are just vernacular architecture,
Yeah.
and now to be more permanent, becoming a nation, and a nation that was progressive.
Yes.
So it has to express which direction that the country will move based on the modern Islamic principles.
This roof is so uncharacteristic of a mosque roof. For me, it looks remarkably different to the Safavid-style domes that you see over there in the distance.
Right.
So how did the architect conceive this roof form?
Well, one original brief that was asked by the first Prime Minister was it has to be reflective of what the Malay culture is. So partly it was maybe the monarchy system, partly it's due to the royal umbrella.
Okay.
That whenever an agong or a sultan or a king goes out, he has an umbrella. And also reflective of your kampong houses, your vernacular houses.
I see that in the kind of the pitch roof that's also leaning slightly forward.
Right.
And I guess what I love about that is that it's also reflective of the large raised terrace spaces underneath. It feels like the Serambi or the traditional terrace spaces of a kampong dwelling.
If Malaysia's national religion is Islam, would the mosque then be an effective indicator of the nation's architectural direction?
We are talking about mosque architecture in this case. During the 80s, after the independence, there is this sort of looking at the Middle Eastern variety of mosques. That was 30 years ago. Now we are looking at more progressive Islamic architecture because we're more confident and you're looking at sustainability in Islamic architecture. So it's very exciting in the near future because we've done a few that will transform the mosque architecture into something that is more refreshing and also back to the spirit of the original mosque architecture, like this one here.
I'm looking forward to the transformation.
It will be soon.
I've learnt a lot today.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Yes.
I'm going to stay up here
Right.
and have a bit of a look around.
Okay,
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
You know, there is more to this mosque than first meets the eye. Yes, it's rich in Islamic geometry and Islamic references, but it also is rich in Malay motif, whether it is the agong or sultan or king's umbrella, or whether you read it as a reinterpretation of the kampong roof. And even the fact that the whole public environment beneath this roof form is actually like a raised serambi or terrace, it again evokes the sense of to the traditional kampong village. But what is most important for me is the fact that this is staunchly modern. It's embracing new materials, glass, steel, concrete and terrazzo. And it was a conscious nod in the direction of modernity and shrugging away the British colonial past.
Masjid Negara heralded a new, exciting future. This new vision of Malaysia fully embraced both its Islamic background and its diverse population. But what next for Malaysian architecture? After the break, I speak with heritage experts and leading architects to find out more. Kuala Lumpur's architects are adapting enthusiastically to local conditions. They are also more eager to preserve Malaysia's architectural heritage. I'm going to speak to Elizabeth Cardoza, a heritage conservation crusader, to tell me more about what makes up Malaysian identity.
Hi, Jason.
How are you?
I'm good. Good to meet you.
Thanks very much for agreeing to meet with me in this kind of hotel of a bygone charm. Elizabeth, I'm here on a quest for identity. And I've had so many different viewpoints as to what that Malaysian identity is. If you've got to summarise it in one sentence, what is the Malaysian architectural identity?
I will use something that Lawrence Loh, who's an architect and our president of Banwarsan, says. It's about roots and roots.
Okay, tell me about that.
As in roots, where you came from. But also roots, as you are coming, you take a certain route, and as you travel and as you journey, you pick up things along the way. And it is about the journey, where different communities came from. They brought with them their knowledge, they brought with them their skills, they brought with them their traditions, they brought with them their spiritual notions, and they constructed spaces and places which they were comfortable with. But these places and spaces are not exactly the same as where they originally came from, but to match the climate or the conditions in which they came into.
Elizabeth has reminded me that Malaysia's architectural identity lies in its heritage. And this heritage is represented by Malaysia's past, present and future. Be it the Sultan Abdul Samad building or the Petronas Twin Towers, both buildings echo the nation's identity and ambitions in their respective eras.
It's the same message, 100 years apart. One was built in 1896 and the other was completed in 1996. And what do you have there? And so you can't take one away. They really have to sit together. You have to read them together. Because if you didn't have one, you kind of like, so what?
And that is your route.
Yes, and that's your route.
Elizabeth, thank you very, very much. I really appreciated this chat. I'm going to be scratching my head trying to design my building now, so I really appreciate this chat.
Not at all.
Really
pleasure. It was really a pleasure meeting you.
That was certainly an interesting meeting with Elizabeth. And have I learnt anything more about Malaysian architectural identity? I think I have. I mean, I get the sense that she's talking about layers of time and history, whether it's British colonial influence or whether it's the sense of post-independence and the need for an Islamic element in the architecture. Or maybe it's even Malay motifs from the Kampong tradition. What's important is the idea of preservation and conservation, preserving structures like this in order for us to be able to teach future generations, and hopefully that can inform modern Malaysian architecture.
Dr. Ken Yang, a leading mind in Malaysian architecture, is a mentor and a personal friend of mine. I'm here to seek his thoughts on Malaysia's developing architectural identity.
It's kind of nice coming to this building because I remember as a student studying this building a lot. But what I really want to understand is why is it that Malaysia has seemed to struggle to find its architectural identity?
People say, searching for an architectural identity is an issue foisted upon us by the foreigners. If you ask a British architect, what is British architecture? He can't answer. But if you ask an American architect, what's American architecture?
Yes.
You can't. So why should Malaysian architects be forced to find an architectural Malaysian identity? We should just do architecture and do it well, rather than just give an identity or give it some sort of entity like an identity.
So your approach to architecture is just honest architecture then. How does it make this building particularly appropriate for Malaysia?
I call this connection to the place.
Right.
Right, for an architecture to have a meaning, then for a particular locality, we should find linkages between the architecture and locality.
Leading minds like Ken Yang prefer to deliver architecture that takes into account environmental considerations rather than finding the answer to a building's national identity. With a project about to start in KL, I have a stake in the direction the architecture takes from now on. I am reminded that good architecture ultimately serves society's cultural and social practices, but it also seeks to preserve the natural and built environment for future generations. My quest for a Malaysian identity in architecture has been a bit of a challenging one in this episode because, well, I realise that architecture relates to a particular period in time. Maybe it's the British colonials who had a particular idea what Malay architecture should be, and it was slightly more Moorish or Mughal influenced. Then you have this sense of nation building and post-independence wanting to take international style blocks and put an atap roof on to try and find a Malaysian identity. Or even just a simple reference to Islamic geometry also alludes to a Malaysian architectural style. I guess for me, the climate is a particularly important factor, maybe because I'm a green architect. Maybe there is a chance to actually find a modern architecture for Malaysia that blends climate with an element of Islamic geometry and also a few references from the past. That's probably what I'll be taking forward with me back to Singapore.